Who else do we have? The VIPs arrive in 5 hours, and the chef just walked out. The echo of Robert's voice cut through the marble and panic of the corporate lobby. Half the event staff froze, eyes darting toward the double doors where 2 delivery men were already rolling away empty catering racks. One of them said something about cross-contamination. Robert didn't listen. He just saw a disaster wrapped in silver chafing dishes. "I can take it from here," Kira said. Someone laughed. Robert did too, until she pulled out her phone and tapped an app with a company logo he'd just signed a contract with. "I'm not just offering help," she added, without flinching. "You already paid me. Subscribe now." Because the boss laughed at the single mom janitor for packing leftovers. What he didn't know? She owned the catering company that just saved his career. Her name was Kira Langley. Most knew her as the janitor with a quiet voice and a kid who waited in the break room after school. But they didn't know she used to wear chef whites, embroidered with her initials. Didn't know the velvet ropes, gala menus, and 6-figure food budgets she once commanded. Didn't know her last name used to sit on the side of a food truck parked outside Parliament Hill. Now she carried brooms instead of knives, and she preferred it that way. Every leftover tray she packed, every floor she polished, every smug smirk she ignored, none of it was surrender. It was preparation. Where are you watching from? Because Robert Greaves picked the wrong woman to humiliate in front of an audience. 2 weeks earlier, the stench of roasted artichoke and sour cream lingered as Kira folded foil over cold croissants. The executive lunch had ended an hour ago, and she worked quickly, packing untouched food into 3 neat containers while the boardroom emptied of laughter and wine breath. "You hoarding food again, janitor?" Robert's voice was always louder when people were around. Kira didn't stop folding the foil, just making sure it doesn't go to waste. Sure. Someone's got to feed the pigeons," he smirked, nodding at Milo's backpack on the bench behind her. "Or maybe just training your kid in scavenging." The staff laughed harder than the joke deserved. Kira didn't respond. She just stacked the foil trays in her cooler bag, wiped the counters again, and nodded politely as they left her behind. In that moment, no one thought she was dangerous. They didn't even think she was memorable. Later that evening, Milo sat on a stool in the break room, picking out safe bites from the tray labeled dairy-free. Kira always marked them clearly. He had nearly died once from a contaminated birthday cupcake. She'd never let that happen again. "Why don't they just give the food to people?" Milo asked between bites. "There's always so much left." "Because giving requires seeing," she replied. "And most of them don't look down long enough to see people like us." Outside the break room, Robert passed by again. He tapped on the glass and mimed chewing, then winked. "You're not mad?" Milo asked quietly. "No," Kira said. "I'm remembering." That night, in a small kitchen 2 buses away from the office, Kira opened her laptop. The corporate newsletter mentioned a vendor call for gala proposals with a private link. Anonymous submissions only. She clicked it. She didn't list her name, just the name of the new LLC she'd filed 2 years ago. Langley Provisioning and Events. No history, no face, just a menu, a budget breakdown, and a full allergen accommodation strategy. She'd built menus like that for senators, but they'd never known she was sleeping in her car at the time. A week later, the office buzzed with talk about the gala. Robert strutted through the hallway with a tablet in one hand and a cappuccino in the other. "We're going bold this year. Gourmet, elegant, on-brand. I picked this one vendor. Real cutting-edge stuff. Hired him myself," he boasted, waving the contract he hadn't even read fully. Kira swept past him in the hallway, earbuds in. "You know the food better be amazing," one assistant whispered. He fired the old team just to look fresh. "It's some company called Langley, something," the intern added. "No idea who they are." But their mock menu had, like, gold-dusted figs. Kira kept walking. In the days that followed, she worked longer shifts, cleaned the lobby floors while watching the entry schedule for vendor site visits. She took note of how many power outlets the ballroom had. She timed elevator deliveries. She studied guest lists left on desks she dusted. This wasn't just her shot. It was her comeback. Quiet, clean, strategic. And then, 2 hours before final prep, chaos. The head chef from the gala vendor called in a food safety violation. One staffer had broken protocol. A walkout followed. Kira stood by the water cooler as Robert yelled at interns and demanded emergency replacements. No one answered his calls. She pulled out her phone, opened her app, tapped once. He turned to her, eyes wild. "Unless you've got a miracle, Langley, I don't have time." "I do," she said, "because you signed with me." Robert blinked like he hadn't heard her correctly. Then his eyes narrowed. "You?" he scoffed. "No. Langley Provisioning is—" Kira held up her phone, already displaying the vendor dashboard. His signature sat at the bottom of the screen, confirming the final selection and payment authorization. The same screen he'd waved around in the break room a week ago. A silence rippled across the lobby. "No offense, but you clean floors." "I also built menus for foreign diplomats," Kira said calmly, "before I lost everything in a divorce that wiped out my business. Now I'm building it again, quietly." He didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. His ego was already trying to catch up to the reality in front of him. Kira pocketed her phone and walked past him toward the service elevator. "I'll need full access to the executive kitchen in 10 minutes. And tell facilities to clear the loading dock." Our backup team's en route. Robert didn't move. But Paula Drayton did. The HR coordinator stepped forward with a clipboard and gave Kira a quick nod, as if to say, "I believe you. Let's move." Kira didn't pause. She didn't have time for small victories. There was food to prepare, staff to redirect, and a reputation to reclaim. But not in the way anyone expected. By the time she entered the back kitchen, the space was filled with half-prepped ingredients in chaos. Trays had been abandoned mid-garnish. Crates of produce sat unopened. The schedule pinned to the corkboard was now obsolete. She pulled her hair back, tied her apron, and snapped her gloves on. "Hands up if you've catered under a health scare before," she said sharply to the remaining staff. "If not, follow my lead and stay out of my way." Some of them recognized her from earlier. One young man, a prep assistant named Jonah, hesitated. "You're the janitor, right?" "I'm the woman who wrote the entire allergen protocol you've been following for 2 weeks," she said. "Keep chopping, small dice." She turned to the sous chef, still lingering by the fridge. "You've got 10 racks of lamb and no starch on the menu. What's your backup?" Wrong answer. "Pull the red potatoes. I'll start the mash and the jus. You do the greens. Use the thyme oil. Don't torch it. You'll ruin the finish." The sous chef nodded slowly, then moved. Like instinct, Paula entered the kitchen 5 minutes later and stood quietly near the door, watching. Kira didn't look up, but she spoke anyway. "Robert thinks image sells the food. He forgets food carries memory." The kitchen was hot now, not from panic, but from motion. Sauté pans hissed, knives hit cutting boards. Kira moved between stations, adjusting, correcting, redirecting, and no one questioned her again. Across the building, Robert paced near the ballroom, trying to make sense of what was happening. He wanted to override the contract, call someone higher up, but it was too late. The client list was finalized. The tables were set. The guests were on their way. He opened the Langley provisioning proposal on his tablet again, suddenly studying it for the first time. Every line item was precise. The menu was innovative but grounded. The staffing plan accounted for food allergies, religious restrictions, and late arrivals. It was, objectively, perfect, and it had come from the janitor. Paula approached him carefully. "She's in control," Paula said. "She lied." "No," Paula said. "She submitted the proposal under a registered LLC. It's all above board. We chose her because she was the best option. You just didn't know it was her." Robert's face flushed red. "You knew?" "Not until her son mentioned she used to cater for government officials. I looked into it. Thought it was a coincidence." He looked toward the kitchen, jaw clenched. "And now?" "Now I think she's the only reason this gala won't become a PR disaster." Back in the kitchen, Kira checked the clock. 90 minutes until doors opened. The risotto team was holding steady. The pastry chef, whom she'd hired just last month, had arrived with reinforcements and was already piping espresso mousse into chocolate shells. She took a moment to breathe, stepping into the hallway, just outside the chaos. Milo's backpack was still on the bench in the break room. She'd forgotten to move it. She picked it up, ran her hand across the worn fabric, and smiled to herself. No one saw that moment, and she preferred it that way. She didn't need applause. She needed execution. And she was nearly there. The ballroom sparkled like it had been dipped in money. Glass chandeliers flickered overhead. Ivory linens kissed every table, each one set with gold-plated flatware, and a sprig of rosemary knotted around a cloth napkin. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and corporate performance anxiety. Kira moved through it like she didn't belong, and exactly like she did. In the space of 2 hours, she'd restructured the entire service layout, rehired half her original team, and recalibrated the menu with military precision. And now, as guests filtered in, wearing suits stitched tighter than their smiles, she observed the room with a tactician's eye, checking for disruptions, drop points, and timing cues. Robert stood near the entrance, drink in hand, pretending the disaster hadn't happened. He glanced toward her only once. Kira didn't flinch. She passed the appetizer station, where Jonah was plating fig rounds with whipped chèvre. He looked up nervously. 4 per tray, she reminded him. Keep it elegant, not desperate. He gave a quick nod, hands slightly steadier now. 2 years ago, she'd trained interns like him in a commercial kitchen 3 times this size. Before the lawsuit. Before her ex burned everything down in court. Before she sold her company name to pay Milo's medical bills. That company was gone. But she wasn't. She was standing in it now, under a different name, in shoes that still pinched from the walk across town, doing what she'd always done best, making chaos look like luxury. At the far end of the ballroom, Paula stood with a group of mid-level managers. She wasn't saying anything, just watching the flow of guests, watching Robert take credit for every seamless detail, watching Kira glide from one checkpoint to another, correcting a garnish, adjusting a server's tie, quietly, efficiently, without acknowledgement. Paula sipped her champagne. The first course went out without a hiccup. Milo was in the break room, under the gentle supervision of Paula's assistant. He had his sketch pad, headphones, and 2 slices of rosemary chicken, cut precisely to avoid any hidden dairy. Kira had texted him once. "All is good. I'm okay." He'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a drawing of a tiny chef with a mop in one hand and a gold trophy in the other. She kept that image in her pocket now. As the risotto hit the tables, Robert cornered her near the waitstaff corridor. I need to talk, he muttered. She glanced at the clipboard in her hands. Make it fast. He dropped his voice. You should have said something earlier. To the man who laughed when I packed leftover sandwiches? He sighed. I didn't know. That's the point, she said. You weren't looking. A moment of silence hung between them. Awkward, raw. Your menu's impressive, he added, softer now. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. Do you want something, Robert? He hesitated. I want to make sure. You're not going to use this against me. Kira tilted her head. I'm here to serve food. Not vengeance, but the look in her eyes, steady, unreadable, said you did that to yourself. She walked away. When dessert rolled out, chocolate domes with liquid centers and edible gold dust, executives gasped, murmured, snapped photos. The guest of honor, a tech investor with 1 million followers, posted a story tagging Langley Provisioning with the caption, "This is next-level catering." I don't say that lightly. Robert's phone lit up with notifications. He didn't move. Paula moved toward him, calm as always. She built this in 2 hours, she said, gesturing toward the floor. And you tried to humiliate her over pastries. Robert didn't reply. His mouth was pressed tight. Do you know how many people you've dismissed in this building? Paula added. How many names you never bothered to learn? He looked at her now. You think I'm the only one? No, Paula said. But tonight, you're the only one holding the bill. Robert turned his gaze back to the dining floor. Kira stood near the edge, hands behind her back, posture straight, head high. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. Everything around her, every plate, every light cue, every breath of lavender-scented air was her silent triumph. She had no name badge, no applause, just competence so sharp it sliced the room in half, the kind no one could fake, and everyone could feel. By the time the event ended, guests were asking for her card, not the company's card, hers. She declined politely, telling them to contact the main office. She didn't need to be a face again. She just needed to build. She watched as her team packed the final trays, cleared the linens, and stacked the chairs with quiet speed. One of them, Jonah, paused near her. Hey, he said awkwardly. I hope I work under you again someday. She nodded once. You just did. As he walked away, she finally let herself breathe. The ballroom was empty now. But she wasn't. She was full, with quiet power, steady motion, and something far stronger than pride. She was back. The morning after the gala, the office buzzed like a shaken beehive. Everyone was talking, but none of them said her name. They brought out dessert like it was a magic trick. I heard the tech investor tipped every server individually. Whoever Langley Provisioning is, they just landed 3 more contracts overnight. Kira walked past the break room with her mop bucket in tow. No one looked up. Same uniform, same quiet steps, same badge clipped to her belt. But Paula saw her. From behind her HR desk, Paula tapped the pen against her notepad thoughtfully. The name, Langley Provisioning, was printed at the top of a vendor summary folder on her screen. She'd already matched the LLC registration to Kira's full name. The legal documents were clean, legitimate, and newer than expected. She leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing, not in judgment, but in calculation. Robert hadn't come in yet. Word around the building was that he'd taken the morning off. Resting after a successful event, the email said. But everyone knew he was rattled. And Kira? She was already mopping near the East Wing corridor, moving past corner offices and glass doors like she'd always done. Her rhythm was steady, her back straight, her expression unreadable. She paused outside the conference room, hearing voices through the glass. If Langley's booked for the quarter, we're going to need to adjust the event budget. one voice said. We should find out who owns them. Lock them in early, said another. Kira smiled to herself. Just a flicker. She moved on. Later that afternoon, Milo arrived after school and made his way to the bench near her locker. His headphones slipped around his neck, and his sketch pad was already open. He looked up at her. Did they say thank you? She paused. No, not yet. Are they going to? Kira wrung the mop into the bucket. That's not why I did it. Milo didn't reply at first. He drew a small rectangle on his sketch pad, then a face, then a chef's hat. He shaded the background with slow, careful lines. You should tell them, he said softly. They'll figure it out. He tilted his head. But it's yours. Kira knelt beside him. I'm building something again, but not so they clap. So you don't ever have to clean floors if you don't want to. Milo stared at her, then hugged her tight. From across the hall, Paula stood near the elevator, watching quietly. She didn't interrupt. By the next day, Kira's name had reached the executive floor. Not officially, but whispers traveled. Someone in finance flagged the name Langley as matching the janitorial staff roster. Someone in procurement confirmed the vendor profile had been created using a public computer in the break room weeks ago. Robert tried to stay ahead of it. At the next team huddle, he mentioned the gala's success. All thanks to a vendor I discovered personally, he said, voice strong but eyes cautious. Langley Provisioning, a promising outfit with a refined sense of event balance. We'll be working with them again, assuming I can secure another contract. No one clapped. One of the interns glanced toward Kira, who was quietly wiping down the glass door nearby. She didn't look up. Later that day, Paula walked into the copy room where Kira was replacing the paper towels. You have a minute? Kira folded the empty plastic roll and dropped it in the recycling bin. Sure. They stepped into a quieter corner of the hallway. I know, Paula said simply. Kira met her eyes. What do you want? Nothing, Paula said. Just thought you should know someone in this building sees it. Kira hesitated. You're not going to report me for a conflict? There's no conflict. You followed protocol. Anonymous submission. Cleared legal. You won it on merit. The fact that Robert's ego is bruised isn't your fault. Kira exhaled slowly. Then what? I want to ask a question, Paula said. Do you plan to stay here? Kira looked down at her shoes. Scuffed soles, clean laces. For now. Why? Because quiet places let you rebuild, she said. And I'm not finished, Paula nodded. If anything changes, if you need cover from above, you come to me. Kira didn't smile, but something in her posture eased. Thank you. The week continued. Kira resumed her regular shifts. Floors, windows, disposal. But things felt different. Not on the surface, not in the tasks, but in the way people moved around her. Less dismissive, less blind. Even the CEO, during a hallway walkthrough, paused briefly and nodded in her direction. It wasn't respect yet, but it was beginning to look like awareness. And that, for Kira, was enough. The smell of burnt espresso drifted through the break room. Kira stepped in with her cleaning cart and paused. The coffee machine blinked red. Grounds overflowed from the pod drawer, and someone had left a sugar packet, half torn on the counter. She sighed and reached for a towel. Behind her, Jonah stood awkwardly near the vending machine, holding a protein bar like it might bite him. Hey, he said, you're the one who fixed the gala, right? Kira glanced over her shoulder. Fixed it? I mean, you were in charge, weren't you? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she wiped the counter with a clean, deliberate motion. I saw you plate the figs, she said. 4 per tray, not 5. He flushed. You notice that? I notice everything. He looked down. I've been trying to get into event logistics. just an intern right now. But I figured, I don't know, maybe if I asked the right person. She turned to him fully now. What's your name? Jonah. Jonah Kessler. You have a food safety certification, Jonah. He blinked. No. I mean, I've taken the training modules online. Then you're halfway there. Print your certificate and staple it to your resume. Bring it to the kitchen after your shift. Quietly. His eyes widened. Wait, really? Kira didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Just don't ruin the chocolate piping next time. Upstairs, Paula typed notes into an HR file when Robert appeared at her door. He didn't knock. Got a second? She glanced up, then back to her screen. If you need an incident report, use the template. This isn't about paperwork. She closed the file and leaned back. Robert hesitated. There's a problem. With that janitor of yours. She's not mine, Paula said. She's the building's. He folded his arms. She's gaining attention. Some of the executives are asking if she's connected to the vendor. If she pulled something, Paula raised a brow. You mean the vendor you chose and praised? He ignored that. I just don't want this to turn into something messy. An HR narrative? She followed protocol. Anonymous submission, formal contract, stellar execution. The only narrative is the one you're afraid of. He frowned. It's going to look bad. It's going to look honest, Paula replied, which is rare around here. In the evening, Kira sat across from Milo at their small kitchen table. He sorted sliced strawberries into rows of 3 while she reviewed a catering invoice on her tablet. Milo looked up. Do they know it's you yet? Some do. Are they mad? Kira tapped the screen, then turned it off. They're confused, she said. Mad comes later. Then Respect Milo nodded like he understood. He didn't. Not yet. But he would. 2 days later, Kira arrived at the executive kitchen to restock cleaning supplies. A new delivery team stood outside, confused and muttering. They're not letting us up, said the vendor's name isn't on the list. Kira checked the invoice slip. It wasn't her company's name. It was a competing firm, one Robert had worked with before. She narrowed her eyes. I'll handle it, she said. Inside, she found Robert speaking with a catering coordinator in the hallway. I thought Langley was rebooked, the coordinator said. Robert shrugged. They had scheduling issues. I took care of it. You didn't ask me, Kira said from behind them. He turned. This isn't your domain anymore. You reallocated my contract without cause. I replaced a vendor, Kira. Not a janitor. She stepped closer, voice low. You're playing safe. You think a known name will shield you. He didn't respond. You're not wrong, she added, but you are predictable. He smirked. You think you can muscle me out with a resume from 10 years ago? She tilted her head. I don't need to. Your own staff has already started asking who ran the event. He stiffened. I'll clean your floors, Robert. But don't confuse silence with absence. That night, Paula called Kira into her office. I heard about the vendor switch. Kira folded her arms. He's trying to erase it. Paula nodded. Let him try. Kira frowned. You're not concerned? Oh, I'm very concerned. But I've also worked here long enough to know when something's gathering momentum. She opened a drawer and handed Kira a letter. 2 departments requested your services directly. Not as a janitor, as a logistics consultant. They're planning internal events. Small, but budgeted. Kira stared at the page. It was printed on company letterhead. They used your vendor name, Paula added. You're being noticed. Kira didn't speak right away. Finally, she said, Does Robert know? No, and he doesn't need to. Yet in the break room, Milo drew stars around the edges of a menu draft while Kira organized her schedule. He didn't ask about Robert. He didn't need to. She reached over and added a note to the bottom of the page. Menu subject to change, depending on who's paying attention. The following week, Kira arrived early. The building was still half asleep, elevators humming, fluorescent lights blinking awake. She wheeled her cart past the security desk and nodded at the guard, who offered a sheepish smile. Everyone had seen the photos from the gala by now, circulating in internal group chats and whispered conversations, but no one said it aloud. Langley Provisioning had become a name. But Kira still pushed her mop bucket like it was armor. She made her way to the 17th floor, where an internal strategy session was scheduled later that morning. A different department, new faces, quiet enough to test something different. She'd been invited, not officially, not through Robert, but through an internal email chain where someone CC'd the Langley contact from the gala. She hadn't corrected them. She arrived in the pre-meeting kitchen area, unpacked 3 trays of warm croissants, a carafe of citrus water with rosemary sprigs, and a stack of compostable napkins folded precisely. Every detail counted, especially the invisible ones. By the time the executives walked in, Kira was gone. In the HR wing, Paula clicked open a spreadsheet titled Departmental Catering Allocations, Q2. She'd added a new column last night, Preferred Vendor, Non-Contractual. Kira's name showed up in 4 departments already. Robert had noticed. He appeared in Paula's doorway mid-morning. Why is she everywhere? Paula didn't look up. Because she does the job well. She's mopping the halls and getting paid to serve food on the side. That's not normal. She's offering value. People are responding to it. She's undermining internal operations. She's outperforming them. Robert stepped closer. You don't think this will backfire? Paula finally met his gaze. It already did, just not on her downstairs. Kira restocked paper towels in the 3rd floor women's restroom. As she turned to leave, a voice called out from behind her. Miss Langley? She turned to see a woman in a sharp slate blazer, phone in hand. I'm from legal, the woman said. You submitted Langley Provisioning's vendor packet? I did. I'm auditing contracts for conflicts of interest. You're listed as both a contractor and employee. Kira held her gaze. Is that a problem? Not if it's declared properly. You used a third-party LLC, anonymous bid. Clean process, but going forward, we'll need transparency if you continue dual service. I understand. The woman studied her a moment longer. I've read your allergen matrix. It's impressive. Thank you. Then, with a quiet nod, the woman disappeared down the hall. Later that day, Jonah found Kira organizing the supply closet. He held out a laminated card. I passed the certification, he said, and I registered with ServSafe, like you said. She took the card, glanced at the date, and nodded. You'll assist prep at the Smithson event next Friday, she said. Non-salaried. Per diem, his face lit up. Seriously? You've earned a test. He beamed, then hesitated. Why are you still here? She looked up. What do you mean? You could walk away. Go full-time vendor. Build it bigger. But you're still cleaning floors. Kira set the card aside gently. Because some floors are worth staying close to. 2 days later, an emergency department meeting was called. The CEO had caught wind of vendor crossover and requested a full review. Robert led the meeting, confident, authoritative, composed, until he read aloud a request from facilities management praising Langley Provisioning's superior execution, punctuality, and discretion. She's bypassing chain of command, he snapped. She's following need, Paula corrected from the far end of the table. He turned toward her, face stiff. You're defending this? I'm acknowledging it. You can either punish performance or partner with it. She's not even salaried staff. She's outperforming salaried staff. The room went quiet. Someone near the back added, "She's also the reason that last quarter's gala didn't implode." Robert's lips tightened, but he said nothing. For the first time, his silence wasn't power. It was exposure. That evening, Kira stopped by the break room to check on Milo. He sat at the table sketching quietly, this time drawing a large room with chandeliers, rows of food, and a small figure standing at the edge. "Who's that?" she asked, pointing to the figure. "You," said. "But everyone's facing the food, not you." She studied it, eyes soft. "That's how I like it," she said. He handed her a second sheet. It was a rough copy of a flyer, Langley Provisioning, custom catering and precision planning. There were no pictures, just her last name and the slogan, "We notice everything." She looked at him, then tucked the page into her pocket. Upstairs, Robert stared at his screen. His inbox was full of minor apologies. Vendors confirming cancellation, managers rewriting requests, legal copying him on clarification chains. His thumb hovered over the mouse. He didn't open Kira's file. He already knew what was in it, and more painfully, he knew what wasn't. His name, his credit, his control. Kira had written herself back into the story. Quietly, precisely, irrevocably, the building's annual Q3 strategy session loomed. And for the first time in years, the logistics team wasn't sure who was in charge. Kira stood at the back of the meeting prep room, clipboard in hand, watching as two junior coordinators argued over floral placement. The CEO wanted minimalism. The head of product wanted bold centerpieces. The catering lead, new, young, and already sweating, had misread the room's layout. "Too many tables," Kira said flatly, cutting through the noise. Both coordinators turned to her. She stepped forward, gently pulled the floor plan off the wall, flipped it, and revealed the correct blueprint taped underneath. "This is the version, legal approved." The guest count changed after procurement pulled out of the event. "You'll get fire code violations if you don't adjust." The younger of the two blinked. "How did you—" "I cleaned this floor," she said. "I also read things people leave behind." No one argued after that. At her locker later that day, Kira removed her apron and reached for the spare folder she kept hidden behind the cleaning solution. Plain black, unmarked. Inside were documents, insurance confirmations, kitchen inspection logs, a revised vendor contract template, and the final version of the Smithson event invoice. All signed, all filed. Langley Provisioning was officially on the internal preferred list, not just as a filler, as a first call vendor. She tucked the folder back into place. Robert watched the activity from his glass-walled office, tapping his pen against the desk. People moved differently now. They spoke in low tones when she passed, not out of ridicule, but out of awareness. Awareness that she knew something they didn't, that she had already proven it, and he hadn't stopped her. His desk phone rang. He didn't answer. That evening, Paula found Kira in the service stairwell, sitting on the second step with a paper cup of soup. "You always eat here?" Kira nodded. "Quiet." Paula sat beside her. "We've never had a janitor with their own W-9 on file as a vendor." Kira stirred her soup. "First time for everything." "You? No. Technically, you've created a dual impact model," Paula continued. "Employee by day, contractor by demand. It's unconventional." Kira tilted her head. "Is that a problem?" "No," Paula said. "It's an asset. And it's starting to scare the wrong people." Kira didn't respond right away. Then, "Good." 2 days before the Q3 session, a new challenge arrived. A fire inspection notice. Unexpected, aggressive, and time-stamped with the city's emblem. The kitchen facilities booked for Langley provisioning had been flagged for reinspection. Kira knew what it meant. This wasn't protocol. It was sabotage. The paperwork delay would void her eligibility unless she could present a backup plan within 48 hours. She paced her apartment that night, Milo asleep on the couch, his sketch pad half finished on his chest. She sat down beside him and opened the pad. This time, the drawing showed a split hallway. On one side, a janitor's closet. On the other, a banquet table. She traced the line dividing them with her finger. She didn't need to choose. She needed to connect them. The next morning, she arrived 2 hours early. Instead of going to the janitor's closet, she went to the IT department. Jonah sat at the front desk, surprised. "I need a favor," she said. "A projection screen, portable, with HDMI, for what?" "I'm hosting a tasting." On the loading dock, he blinked. "For the Q3 strategy session?" "For the right people," she said, "before they lose the wrong thing." That afternoon, a message hit internal inboxes. Langley provisioning preview session, today at 4:30. Lower deck service ramp. Open invitation. No RSVP. No dress code. By 4:40, half the operations team was down there, standing beside loading trucks and crates, sipping hand-poured broth in biodegradable cups, and eating risotto off compostable spoons. There was no decor, no jazz quartet, just food that made people stop talking when they tasted it. Paula arrived late, holding a notepad and watching from the side. Robert never came. Kira didn't look for him. After the crowd thinned, Jonah approached. That was kind of genius. She packed away the last crate. The building's backbone runs through here. Power, freight, staff entrances. No one thinks about it. He looked around. You made the dock into a boardroom. No, Kira said, closing the crate. I reminded them that it already was. The next morning, legal cleared her backup venue. An off-site kitchen, smaller, certified, flexible. Kira had pre-booked it months ago, quietly, just in case. She forwarded the inspection records and updated invoice before Robert could raise a complaint. When he opened the file, he didn't see her name. He saw everything she'd already planned for and realized he was, once again, 2 steps behind. Kira stood by the freight elevator that evening, waiting for the last vendor crate to return. She rested one, hand on the cold metal wall, her reflection barely visible in the stainless steel. The woman looking back at her wore the same uniform, but the power behind her eyes had changed, and she knew it. The Q3 strategy session opened with applause in polished speeches. The CEO stood at the podium in a deep navy suit, spotlight on his perfectly measured gestures. Around him, high-ranking department heads lined the edge of the ballroom like an honor guard, each trying not to look at the catering tables too obviously, but failing, because the food wasn't just food anymore. It was a message. Langley provisioning had arrived. Trays of delicate tempura squash blossoms, saffron-laced couscous, and shaved stone fruit with lavender honey rotated through the crowd. No table tents, no logos, no servers announcing the brand. Just silence and satisfaction. In the corner near the utility entrance, Kira watched the room from behind a partition of folded service screens. She wore the same pressed uniform as always, a name badge, a utility belt. But nothing about her posture said invisible anymore. She didn't move like a ghost in the room. She moved like a presence. Paula entered 15 minutes late, scanning the crowd before finding Kira near the back. You saw the revised programs? She asked. Kira nodded. 3 vendors listed, only 1 uncredited. You're the only one who didn't demand a spotlight. I don't need a spotlight, Kira replied. I built the power grid. Paula smirked and handed her a folder. "What's this?" "Internal request," she said. "Facilities want you to consult on spatial planning for an upcoming security retrofit. They want discretion. You're the only person they trust to walk both worlds." Kira opened the folder. Inside was a sketch of the building's lowest level. Emergency tunnels, electrical closets, duct access, all places she knew like muscle memory. "They're offering double your current rate," Paula added. Kira didn't respond. She didn't have to. Across the ballroom, Robert tried to keep smiling. He stood at the edge of the product showcase, sipping a cocktail he didn't finish, and nodding at the head of marketing as they praised the cultural maturity of the event. But his eyes kept drifting toward the kitchen entrance. He hadn't spoken to Kira in days. Not since the fire inspection stunt failed. Not since her off-site contingency saved the event without his input. He'd tried to flag it to the CEO, tried to question protocol, vendor exposure, even employee ethics. But legal had shut it down cleanly. "She's in compliance," they said. "The issue isn't hers." The issue, it turned out, was him. As dessert was served, miniature matcha tarts and cardamom panna cotta, an unexpected ripple went through the crowd. The CEO set down his note cards mid-sentence. "Before we close today," he said, "I'd like to acknowledge a recent partner who reminded this company what preparation really looks like. When things nearly unraveled, someone rebuilt our foundation overnight and kept it standing without ever asking for recognition." Kira stilled. Milo, sitting near Paula at a corner table, sat up straighter. "We don't need to say her name," the CEO continued. "She knows who she is." And more importantly, so do we. Soft claps followed. Nothing thunderous, just a steady, resonant affirmation. Kira didn't step forward, didn't smile, didn't move. But her chest rose slowly, controlled, measured. After the event, the team cleared the ballroom in record time. Jonah moved trays into the loading hallway, while Milo helped stack folded linen napkins into crates. "You good?" he asked Kira. "I am." "You going to keep doing both?" "For now." "People are watching you." Kira glanced at the hallway mirror as she adjusted a crate lid. "I know." Jonah hesitated. "What happens if someone tries to take it from you again?" She gave him a look, flat, unwavering. "They can try." In the following days, the internal emails changed. Her company name began appearing in actual footer credits. Department leads requested Langley Provisioning's documentation directly. Someone even tagged her on the internal social board, quoting the CEO's speech. Robert didn't appear on the next vendor call. He was listed as stepping back for restructuring. The change was silent. No drama, just removal, just consequence. Paula passed Kira in the hallway later that week, paused briefly, then said, "You flipped the entire narrative without ever raising your voice." Kira nodded. "Noise doesn't change things. Systems do." "Do you know what scares them most?" Kira raised an eyebrow. "You're still mopping the floor." Kira's mouth curved. Not quite a smile, but something that lived nearby. "I want the next girl with a lunch cooler and a clipboard to know it's possible," she said. "To walk in, unnoticed, and still leave a mark that doesn't wash off." Paula just looked at her for a long moment, then said, "She already does." That night, Kira left the building through the same door she always used. Same keycard swipe, same echo in the stairwell. But the city beyond it wasn't the same anymore. And neither was she. Monday brought a different kind of storm. Not one with thunder or rain, but a paper storm. Requests, inquiries, bookings, spreadsheets. Langley Provisioning had become the quiet frontrunner for every major departmental event in the pipeline. The inbox tied to Kira's LLC pinged every hour. Most messages opened the same way. We'd prefer to keep this informal. Discretion appreciated. She'd built her reputation without noise, and now everyone wanted a piece of that silence. But it came at a cost. She was working 3 jobs now: janitor by payroll, caterer by contract, and quiet strategist by necessity. It meant sleeping less, planning, more managing vendors who used to work for her and now reported to her again, but through different channels. And still, she pushed her cart down those halls each morning like she always had, as if nothing had changed. Because to Kira, nothing important had. Down in the supply office, Jonah was organizing prep schedules on a shared monitor. You've got the Milner Institute lunch Tuesday, security walkthrough Wednesday, then the wellness division breakfast Thursday. That one's vegan and dairy-free across the board. Kira nodded. Double-check nut contamination protocols. No shared blades. He raised an eyebrow. You really think anyone's going to check that closely? They won't, she said. But that's why we will. He smiled. You know you're training me to replace you, right? No, she said. I'm training you to outgrow me. Meanwhile, Robert had begun to shrink into the building's fabric. His corner office blinds were half closed now. He exited through back doors instead of striding through the atrium. Fewer people looked him in the eye. When he passed Kira in the hallway that afternoon, he offered a single nod. She didn't return it. He paused, turned slightly. You've made your point. Kira set her mop aside and faced him directly. Which one? That you belong in the room. She tilted her head. You still think it's your room. For a brief second, something cracked behind his eyes. Not defeat, just understanding. The realization that he'd become a footnote in someone else's story. And she was still writing it. Later that day, Paula sent a single-line message to Kira's vendor inbox. I think it's time we move beyond the break room. Attached was a proposal draft. Executive event planning role, contract to full-time option, title, rate, responsibilities, all spelled out. Not janitorial, not vendor, strategist, architect. Kira stared at the screen in silence for nearly 3 full minutes. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she forwarded it to herself, then closed her laptop. In the break room, Milo colored quietly at the table, feet swinging beneath the chair. Kira unpacked his snacks, making sure the labels were still visible. He looked up. You're going to have to stop cleaning soon, aren't you? She blinked. Why would you say that? Because everyone's asking you for stuff. Grown-up stuff. You don't have time to sweep anymore. Kira knelt beside him. I'll always make time to sweep, she said. Not because I have to. Because I remember what it taught me. Like what? That details matter. That invisible things are sometimes the most important. That cleaning up after people tells you how they treat the world. He paused. Even the ones who don't see you? Especially them. By Thursday, the Milner Institute event was running like a clock. The city's education board showed up early. Every executive stayed late. The CFO called Kira personally to thank her for the allergy-safe chocolate station, which had saved them a legal nightmare. As they packed the last table linen, Jonah glanced at her. You ever think about stopping? Stopping what? All of it. Leaving the building? Starting fresh somewhere with your name on a sign. She shook her head. That's not what I'm building. He tilted his head. Then what are you building? She looked around at the silent cleanup crew, the empty stage, the faded tape on the floor where each crate had once stood. A structure where someone like me doesn't have to start over in the shadows. That evening, Paula met with the CEO. She laid out the internal data. Departments requesting Kira's insight. Vendors adopting her protocols. Employees requesting mentorship. Budget metrics showing reduced waste, increased satisfaction. She's rewriting the blueprint, Paula said. and doing it without ever asking for credit. The CEO studied the report in silence. Finally, he said, "And she still pushes a mop?" Paula smiled. "Only until the right person asks her to stop." He leaned back, thoughtful. "Tell her we're ready to make that ask." Paula didn't say yes. She just closed the folder and left it on his desk. That night, Kira stood alone in the freight hall. The air smelled of cardboard and metal. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. She pulled out her phone and opened the forwarded proposal again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She tapped reply. Subject, event strategy, proposal. Message, let's talk. The next morning began like every other, except for the knock on Kira's locker. Paula stood just outside the custodial corridor, holding 2 paper cups and a manila folder. "You said, let's talk." "I brought coffee." Kira took one of the cups, warm against her palm, and stepped aside. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by rows of mops and cleaning fluid. "You could have waited for a conference room," Kira said. "I figured this was the most honest place to start." Paula opened the folder. Facilities has already approved the hybrid role. Strategy and operations, split title, full benefits. You'd oversee vendor logistics across departments, but still maintain discretion on your end. They don't want a nameplate. They want results. Kira flipped through the paperwork. A higher pay grade than she expected. A clearer title than she was used to. Still, she didn't answer right away. "What's the catch?" "There's no catch," Paula replied. "Just one request." Kira raised an eyebrow. "Stop pretending your work needs to stay invisible to be respected." Kira looked back down at the forms. The print was sharp. The path was clear. But the past echoed louder than any promotion. She closed the folder gently. "I'll think about it." Later that afternoon, Kira made her rounds like usual. The building still pulsed with familiar rhythms. Copiers humming, muted hallway conversations, perfume clinging to the air outside the HR wing. As she swept the marble in front of the elevator bay, she overheard 2 execs chatting behind her. "Did you see the Smithson report? She cut their prep time by 40%. I heard legal wants to patent her allergen matrix. She's still on janitor payroll. For now." Rumor says not for much longer. Kira kept sweeping. The sound of the bristles against the tile was steady, precise. A rhythm that had always anchored her, even when the rest of her life spun out of control. At 4 p.m., the CFO called an all-department gathering in the lower auditorium. Kira wasn't invited. She was, however, responsible for setting out the beverage trays. She entered 15 minutes early, dressed in the same navy slacks and utility shirt, and quietly arranged the drink table off to the side of the room. The room filled quickly. She stayed in the back, barely noticeable, just how she'd always worked, until her name was said aloud. "Before we begin," the CFO said, glancing at the back of the room, "I'd like to acknowledge someone who's reshaped our internal operations without ever requesting a single meeting, spotlight, or title." Kira froze. "Ms. Kira Langley, your discretion has been your signature, but your systems, your results, and your leadership have made a mark none of us can ignore." Every head turned. She didn't move, didn't blink, just tightened her grip on the carafe of lemon water and held her ground. "We've extended a new position to Miss Langley," the CFO continued. "A formal hybrid role that reflects the influence she's already had. She's the first cross-departmental logistics strategist in our company's history." A small wave of applause rippled through the room. Not thunderous, but enough. Enough for people to remember the name behind the precision. She nodded once, acknowledging it, accepting it, then quietly stepped into the hallway. Back in the break room, Milo sat cross-legged on the bench. folding paper cranes from napkins. "You were on the announcement board," he said without looking up. "I was in the back of the room," she replied, setting down the empty tray. "But they clapped," he said. "They did." He handed her a crane. It was small, slightly lopsided, and marked with a pencil line across the wing. "What's the line for?" "That's how you know it's mine," he said. She smiled and tucked it into her pocket. That evening, Robert sat alone in his office, watching as his department's quarterly performance metrics slid across the screen. Kira's name appeared in nearly every note. Vendor referrals, efficiency improvements, emergency recovery protocols. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and stared at the ceiling. He tried to frame her as lucky, but luck didn't document systems this cleanly, didn't create protocols that other departments copied, didn't get applause from a room that once barely remembered your face. No, this wasn't luck. It was mastery, and she had earned it without him. In the custodial corridor, Kira stood alone, sipping the second coffee Paula had left behind. It had gone cold, but she liked it that way. There was something honest in the quiet, something solid in the space where she'd rebuilt from nothing. She reached into her pocket and unfolded Milo's paper crane, smoothing the creases carefully. Then, without fanfare, she pinned it to the inside of her locker door, not as a trophy, but as a signature, a quiet mark, one no one else could erase. The following Monday, Kira didn't clock in as a janitor. She entered through the service elevator as always, utility bag over her shoulder. But this time, her badge flashed a new designation when it beeped against the scanner. Strategic Logistics, Internal Ops. Same shoes, same route, different access. No fanfare, no announcement, just subtle shifts. The security guard at the front desk straightened up when she passed. A junior executive held the door open without realizing why. Even the coffee station had adjusted. Her usual black thermos now stood on a labeled shelf, reserved for Langley, operations. She made no comment. She just moved. Upstairs, Robert's nameplate was gone from his office. The blinds had been pulled open. A potted ficus now stood in the corner where he once kept a miniature liquor cart. The new occupant, someone from legal, had already redecorated with case binders and compliance charts. Kira paused at the open door. Paula appeared beside her, holding a slim tablet and a grin she wasn't trying to hide. "He didn't give 2 weeks' notice," Paula said. "He submitted a one-line resignation, effective immediately. No regrets." Kira stared at the empty space on the desk, then said, "He had plenty." By noon, Kira was leading her first closed-door meeting. It wasn't a boardroom affair, just a plain table in Conference C with 4 department reps, each holding notepads and watching her more carefully than they would have a week ago. "The challenge," the facilities rep said, "is that the event footprint outgrew the approved layout by 16%. We're breaching fire code by floor plan, not headcount," the IT rep added. "We can't cut power to Section B without disrupting the AV feed." Kira nodded slowly, flipping her tablet to a live schematic. "I've already reallocated 3 underutilized zones," she said. "You'll move the donor wall to the south corridor, float catering back toward the mezzanine, and reassign your AV line through the secondary junction under room 212. She zoomed in on the map. "No additional permits, no guest rerouting, full compliance. I've logged the timestamps, silence." Then, the AV lead chuckled. "You memorized the duct codes?" Kira didn't smile. "I used to clean them." At 2 p.m., she received a message from the CEO's office. Subject, Internal Architecture Meeting. Your presence requested location. Level 1B, records room time, 3:30 p.m. sharp. She blinked. The records room wasn't a usual venue. It was cold, echoing, rarely visited. She made her way down 15 minutes early, descending into the old bones of the building, the part built decades ago, before the remodels, before the glamour. Inside, 4 people waited around a table draped in old blueprints. The CEO stood among them. "Kira," he said, "you know more about this building than any of us. Not just its walls, its habits." She said nothing, just looked at the schematics. He gestured to a rolled parchment. "We're expanding. We've been offered a second property 2 blocks down, blank slate, but we want the culture here to travel with it." Another executive added, "Not the mistakes, just the structure that worked." They all turned to her. "You've seen it from the ground up," the CEO said. "We want your input." She ran her fingers along the faded architectural lines. "That's not how buildings work," she said. "You don't just copy what's visible." He frowned. "Then how do you replicate success?" "You build it from the parts people don't notice. Light angles, exit flows, access routes, room for error, for breath." A pause followed. Then the CEO nodded. "We're listening." At 5:15 p.m., as most employees packed up and funneled toward the elevators, Kira walked the halls alone, not cleaning, not correcting, just noticing. Jonah caught up to her near the atrium. "You really going to help design the new space?" he asked. "I'm thinking about it." He grinned. "Do we get a rooftop kitchen?" Kira paused. "Do you know how many people fall behind when buildings are designed by people who've never worked a double shift?" He blinked. "You don't build from the top down," she said. "You build for the people who never get invited upstairs." Jonah nodded slowly. "That's actually brilliant." "No," she said. "It's memory." That night, Milo sat at their kitchen table, cutting out a cardboard model of a building. Kira watched from across the room, her laptop open to architectural drafts and vendor spreadsheets. "What's that?" she asked. "It's my headquarters," Milo said proudly, "for a comic I'm making." "Who works there?" "Everyone. Like everyone. The janitor gets the same office as the boss." She leaned back. "Sounds expensive." He shrugged. "It's fair." She stared at the little cardboard model. Glue streaked the edges. Crayons colored the windows. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Just like what she was building, one blueprint at a time. The announcement came quietly. An internal bulletin. No fanfare. No bold font. Subject: Facilities expansion. Advisory board. Appointments finalized. Line item number 4. Kira Langley, Strategic Logistics Lead, appointed to Cross-Site Architectural Oversight Team. Below that, no title fluff, no explanation, no spotlight. But everyone in the building knew what it meant. The janitor had rewritten the structure. And now, she was designing the future. Kira sat at a long steel table in the records room again, this time surrounded by blueprints, not just reading them, but marking them. She traced adjustments in red pen where no one else had thought to look. Air vents too narrow for real airflow. Corridors that bent away from natural light. Restrooms placed too far from the staff lounges. The architecture firm took notes without question. The operations lead deferred to her schedule. Even the CFO asked before blocking calendar invites. Not because she demanded authority, but because she no longer had to. She'd earned gravity. Later that afternoon, Kira stood on the rooftop patio of the original building, arms folded, eyes scanning the city skyline. The second property loomed in the distance. Barely purchased, still nameless. Milo joined her with a juice box and a pair of oversized headphones around his neck. "Is that the one?" he asked, pointing with the straw. "That's the one," she said. "You gonna run it?" "I'm gonna shape it," he nodded. "You think they'll put your name on it?" "I hope not." He squinted up at her. She smiled. Because the names that matter aren't the ones on the glass. They're the ones in the systems, in the airflow, in the way people move without tripping. He didn't get it yet, but one day he would. Downstairs, Jonah was already coordinating a vendor walkthrough for the expansion site. He carried a clipboard now, wore a staff badge, spoke with quiet confidence. People listened. Paula passed him near the service elevator. "Langley trained you well," he laughed nervously. "She doesn't train. She calibrates." "Good," Paula said. "Then you're ready." He blinked. "Ready for what?" She handed him an envelope. He opened it. Vendor liaison, interim appointment, pending permanent contract. His hands trembled slightly. Paula just nodded once and walked away. The ripple was spreading. In the final hours of daylight, Kira returned to the break room. Not because she had to, because she wanted to see it one last time as it had been. Milo's old drawings were still tucked into the side cabinet. Wrinkled, faded, folded. She slid one out. The paper crane, the blueprint, the split hallway. Then from her bag, she pulled something new, a brass plaque. It wasn't large, just 5 inches across, but it was heavy. She fixed it gently to the inside of the janitor's closet door, right where she had once hung her name badge. It read, "Langley started here. She noticed what others missed, so she built what they couldn't. No one would see it often, but someone would, and that would be enough." Weeks later, the new building opened. Subtle, sustainable, seamlessly functional. And at the entrance, not a ribbon cutting, but a quiet unveiling. A small crowd gathered. The CEO spoke first, with practiced gratitude. Then Paula, with warmth. Finally, Kira stepped up. No speech cards, no branding. Just a deep breath and a steady gaze. "This space wasn't built for noise," she said. "It was built for motion, for dignity, for those who hold it together when no one's watching." She didn't need applause, but she got it anyway, because now everyone was watching. And they saw her. As the event closed, Kira stood at the back with Milo. He tugged her sleeve. "You think someone like me could do that one day?" She looked down at him, her eyes soft. "You already are." Subscribe and don't miss our next story. They mocked the single mom janitor for taking the bus. The next day, she drove in as the company's new investor. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?